Hello everyone, this is video 2 for lesson 2.6, geometric proof. If you didn't already watch the first video, I would recommend going back to do that. And what we're going to do is we're going to talk about a few theorems and we're going to continue exploring how to complete a proof. Okay, the first thing we're going to do is look at a few more theorems. The right angle congruence theorem kind of seems a little pointless, but we really do use it. It says all right angles are congruent. So if you know that A and B are right angles, then you know that angle A is congruent to angle B. And the other theorem we're going to be talking about is the congruent complements theorem, very similar to the congruent supplements theorem. It says if angle 1 and 2 are complementary, and 2 and 3 are also complementary, then angle 1 has to equal angle 3. So for example, if 1 is 30 degrees and 2 is 60 degrees, then I would know that this is 60 plus what number is 90? Well, it's going to be 30 again. The 1 and the 3 have to be equal. And one last thing is to remember that you can't use a theorem in its own proof because that's considered circular reasoning. That's like me telling you that you have to do something because you have to do it. Well, why do I need to do it? You didn't give me a good reason. Okay, so you can't just use the theorem in its own proof. You have to come up with other reasons why it is. So let's take a look at another example. And we're slowly working our way up to you actually completing a proof all on your own. In this one, they're going to give us a plan for our proof. Okay, they want us to prove the right angle congruence theorem. Notice it says given angle 1 and angle 2 are right angles. Prove that angle 1 is congruent to 2. They say use the definition of a right angle to write the measure of each angle, then use the transitive property and the definition of congruent angles. So what they've done is they've given you clues to all the steps. Remember, a proof always starts with the given statement. The next statement, try to figure out how to use the definition of a right angle to write step 2. Okay, and it says write the measure of each angle, so that's the other clue for step 2. Then in step 3, they want us to use the transitive property. So think about how you could use that with what you wrote in step 2. And then the last step, the reason is going to be the definition of congruent angles. And remember, the proof statement always has to be the last thing on the left side, and they've given us the last thing on the right. So do your best to fill in that proof, and then press play to check your answers. So notice I filled in the first step with the given statement right here, and I wrote given next to it. The next step, my reason was definition of a right angle. What I did is I said that the measure of angle 1 has to be 90 degrees, and the measure of angle 2 has to be 90, because that's what it means for something to be a right angle. Then I noticed that 1 is equal to 90 and 2 is equal to 90, so that means that 1 is equal to 2. That's the transitive property of equality. We use equality because these are equal signs. Now the last step, it says use the definition of congruent angles, so that's here. And remember, this should always match our proof statement. So angle 1 is congruent to angle 2. So what we're going to do now is I'm going to put up some practice questions. You're going to pause the video when you see the practice question, try and fill it out, and then I'll put up the answers to that practice question. Okay, make sure you've paused it because the answers are about to appear. Okay, so notice it says given that B is the midpoint of AC and AB is congruent to EF. So step 1's reason is given and step 3's reason is given. Now I have to figure out if B is the midpoint of AC, why were they allowed to say that AB is congruent to BC? Well, that's because of what a midpoint means. A midpoint is the exact middle. So that's why they're congruent. It's the definition of midpoint, because I looked at what the word means. Now finally, notice what they did. We have AB is congruent to BC, AB is congruent to EF, so they said BC is congruent to EF. Notice we took out the ABs, I just took this BC and put it here. That's the transitive property, and this time I labeled it of congruence because these are congruent symbols. Let's take a look at another example. Okay, again, I'm going to put up the question, and then you're going to try it, and then you're going to press play to check your answer. So here's the question. Make sure you've paused it because I'm about to show you the answer. Okay, in this one, in part A, it said given over here, so I just copied the given statement. Okay, and then they used the definition of supplementary to get these two things, and then they said they substituted. So you have to look for two things that are the same, and what they did is they took this and put it up where this 180 is. So they got 1 plus 2 equals 2 plus 3. Okay, and that's what they wanted here. They substituted for this 180. Now they said that angle 2 is equal to itself. That's the reflexive property. It's really not a necessary step, but you could do it. And then somehow they got 1 equal to 3 because 2 is congruent to itself. So notice this equation, we have a 2 on both sides. To get rid of the 2 and just be left with 1 and 3, you would have to subtract angle 2 on both sides, and that's the subtraction property. And finally, in the last step, they said use the definition of congruent angles. And remember, this last thing needs to always match the proof statement up here. So angle 1 is congruent to angle 3. So we have one last example. So again, pause the video, try and fill it out, and then press play to check your answers. Now, because of the way this is written, I'm going to have to cover it up to show you the answer. Okay, I'm about to show you the answer, so make sure you've paused. Okay, so what I did is I copied the given statement first, and I wrote given. Then it said to use the definition of complementary to angles. So that means that angle 1 plus angle 2 is 90, and 2 plus 3 is 90. Then it said to use the substitution property of equality. So I replaced these 90 degrees with this expression here. So angle 1 plus angle 2 equals angle 2 plus angle 3. I subtracted angle 2 on both sides to get 1 equals 3. And then I used the definition of congruence to get 1 is congruent to 3. So that's it for this lesson. You're going to have some practice work, so make sure you do it. And one last thing about proofs is that the more you practice them, the easier they get. I know they might seem intimidating at first, but don't give up. Practice them more because they're challenging. So don't let the proofs win. Keep practicing, keep trying them, even if you can only get 1 or 2 steps. So don't give up.